guys, it's Vulture Culture, and these are the Korg DW-8000 and Roland Alpha Juno from 1985. We're going to be checking these two synths out. These two vintage synthesizers represent the absolute best synths that you can buy for under $600. So in the link in the description, I've got a link to a Reverb posting and a eBay posting. This DW-8000 for $550 and the Alpha Juno I think for $520, or I might have gotten those backwards. But so right now you can get these for substantially less than you can get a Behringer DeepMind 12, which is basically the lowest barrier to entry synthesizer you can get. So tonight's live stream, we're going to answer the eternal question, hey Vulture Mom, which of these two synthesizers is the better first synth to get? Or if you only had to buy one vintage synthesizer and you wanted to spend less than $600, which of the two should you get? We're going to go ahead and just create a scratch patch that's being sent to the DW-8000. I'm using these wonderful Retroaktiv programmers, DW-8P, MPG-50. I've done videos on these programmers. Those links are in the description. And if you just want to hear how the synths sound, like the presets, if you just like using presets, those videos are in the description of this video as well. So that's a thing. Over here, I just scroll over and send an initialized sound. And we have to do a couple of things to get this to sound correct on both synths. Okay, so that should be about right. On both of the synthesizers, we are starting with just a good old sawtooth sound. Dubstation says the answer should definitely be both. Yes, Spiritual Anarchist, welcome. Finally, I'm glad you're here too. Both of these synths are awesome. DW-8000 is a hybrid synth. Alpha Juno is completely analog. That matters to some people. We'll go through all of that. Let's listen to the sawtooth sound. So all the way on the low C. What is going on with that? That's a little bit weird. High pass filter? That sounds really thin for some reason. Oh well, I guess we're going with it unless we've got some other reason to assume. That might just be how it sounds. Nick, Dubstation 0, points out that there are great free controller panels for this. So yeah, absolutely. You don't need to spend the money on this expensive hardware. These programmers cost almost as much as the synths do. Although I think they're worth every penny. We'll probably cover some of that later. But what's great about controller is that you can get all of that functionality and program your own sounds, and it usually is free. All you need is a MIDI cable. Zozilla, these are programmers, yeah, controllers. So let's dive into them. I guess the sawtooth down here, I'm just surprised because I haven't heard it in a while, but really thin on the low note versus... Can we talk about the thickness down there? Pretty similar sound actually up top, but down low the difference in the thickness versus they're both great sounding, but they are different, so it's interesting. Walter points out they are not in tune with themselves. Yeah, the DW-8000 might be slightly out. That should be a little closer, so we'll see. So it's the whiskey. So one of the things to point out, let's see, Zazilla says more mids on the upper. Yeah. So one of the things that's interesting about these synthesizers is that you might think that a digital synthesizer is going to be bright and thin sounding. And it's actually is thin in the low end, but it's not going to be bright. You'll notice that the Alpha Juno is just more full range in general. And that's because back in the day, the memory required to actually have a full range oscillator sound wasn't possible if you're using digital oscillators like the DW-8000 does. So it's a little darker sounding actually versus it's about the same up here. It's pretty incredible how close those sawtooths sound, considering their completely different architecture. And, you know, we could compare two Roland synths and the sawtooths could sound pretty different. So, yeah, it's definitely a thing. Let's see. Spiritual Anarchist says, love the DW-8000, but the effects seem to wash out the analog filter a little. Yeah, that's a thing. By the way, neither of these synthesizers have effects, but I've got you covered if you want a free Vintage Effects VST3 plugin. Links also in the description. Go ahead and get it while it's free. Limited time. Let's check out some of the other oscillators. So we have a bunch of oscillators on the DW-8000. Let me just go to the main screen so I can look at the different ones. So those are all of the different waves that we get to start with the DW-8000, which is quite a lot. So we'll go through them. We've got a sort of sawtooth thing. Let me turn the volume down as it's a bit loud. We've got clarinet, which is kind of more of your square wave. We move to acoustic piano. These were derived from additive synthesis, by the way, so they probably actually looked at a waveform. Electric piano for some of those DX7 type sounds. You might be thinking to yourself, well, that doesn't really sound like an electric piano, but that's because it's just a static waveform. You need to introduce the filter to give it that DX7 waveform type thing. But you can hear that the front end of that actually has basically that characteristic. This is another electric piano waveform. We can just kind of compare the differences here. Electric piano 2 has more brightness for sure. Like that one. Clavichord. I could see that being useful for some saxophone-y type effects too. We've got an organ. Nobody likes a good organ sound. Talk about thin and terrible. All of these waveforms too are going to sound really kind of thin and annoying just on their own, because the point is you want to involve that filter, you know. To get more of the sound we're looking for, but we'll get there anyways. We've got some interesting waveforms. We've got brass, which is a modified sawtooth wave, which to me sounds different than the first one. It's kind of like they thinned it out a little bit, which is interesting. Saxophone. Actually sounds really cool because it's a little less grating, but it's got some really nice high end on it. Dubstation says, you would think the additive waves would be great at organs. Yeah, because of course that's the original way that organs worked, but no. So let's see. And then someone said, Tony says the DW has a Moog-like filter. What's interesting about it is the characteristic of this synth, as opposed to something like a ladder filter, is it doesn't lose a lot of low end, which is really awesome. And that's what makes the DW-8000 great for bass. Let's keep checking some of these out, and then we'll check out the oscillators on the on the Alpha Juno. So that's acoustic guitar, distorted guitar. Get some voodoo people shit happening. Electric bass. Funny, it's not that like crazy, but there is a really great slap bass preset that comes with the DW-8000 digital bass. Bell chime, love this one. That's like where a digital synth really just rips. And then we have this sine wave, which is great because you can actually hear how low res these wavetables are. You'll hear so much more noise. Can you hear that noise in there? Don't really hear it up top, but down here. Can you hear that noise? I don't know. Sometimes YouTube compression can be funny, and I don't know what it kind of filters out. But it's a dirty sine. Like, it's not a pure sine wave. So let's see. Spiritual says, I hate organs. I hate organs too, or organ sounds, with the exception being something like an organ pad sound that you might get from like Where the Streets Have No Name or something. Jumping over, let's go to main here on the Retroaktiv MPG-50. Oh my God, I don't know what is going on with my AC, but it is driving me crazy. I'm so sorry, guys. Give me just a split second here. Load. God damn it. Oh, Christ in heaven. There we go. Hopefully that'll fix it. I think it like automatically kicks on. So we've got a bunch of different waveforms when it comes to the Alpha Juno, but they're all analog. What's interesting is a lot of people will say the Alpha Juno is also a digital hybrid, but I haven't seen any compelling argument that supports that other than hearsay. But what it does do is it uses a bunch of waveforms you wouldn't normally see with an analog synthesizer. So we can start with the sawtooth. We've been hearing that. I'll do the same thing and turn the volume down a bit. Which is awesome. But what we can move here, we can actually turn the sawtooth all the way off if we just want to listen to the sub-oscillator. So that's the sawtooth. Now we move into a jagged saw, and you'll notice the additional harmonics. Almost sounds like a layered pulse wave on top of there. And then we move on to a jagged saw that's only got a low bump and a high bump, which is interesting. That one almost sounds more like a like an octave apart sawtooth. You get really fucking big with just one oscillator. Really cool. And then we get a sawtooth waveform, and if you look at this little, they got a diagram there. You probably can't see that on stream, but it's like a bunch of real narrow slices. So somewhere between like a chiptunesy type thing, but also you could see how you could get away with sort of DX7 type electric piano sounds, like comparing that with E-Piano 2 over here. Well, it probably won't sound that similar. This is it can get much brighter because of these crazy waveforms. And then here's one more. This one has almost like a Formanty vocally sort of characteristic to it. Neither of these synths have... Oh, yeah, saw with modulation. Yeah, we'll get into that. So we haven't even gotten there. So that's the sawtooth waveform, but we also have a sub-oscillator waveform. So we've... Well, actually, sorry, let me back up. We've actually got a pulse waveform. So just like on a Juno 106, you can have a sawtooth and a square wave on. Right? And then we can set that to a narrow pulse. And then we can set that to pulse width modulation. And then we can control that rate and the depth. So we can get really great pulse width modulated pad sounds. Dial that back a little. Which could sound really great. My bad. This waveform over here, where there was the gap, that's actually the pulse width sawtooth. So like Gerald was saying in the chat, this has sawtooth width modulation, which I've only really seen on a couple of synths. And what that does is the same thing as pulse width, but on a sawtooth, and that's actually got a very beautiful sound. Yes, that's correct. This is the DW-8000 here and the Alpha Juno here. So yes, Walter says, for reference, mod waves are 700-800 more expensive than I expected. Yeah, 900 euros with the PG300. That's a pretty good price. Like I said, in the description of this video, I have two synths. I've got, I think, an Alpha Juno for 520 with shipping, and a DW-8000 for 550 or so with shipping. So two really great synths. Go ahead and buy them. Mine as well. If you're watching this in the future, they'll probably have sold by the time we get there. So those are the different sawtooth and square wave oscillators on the Alpha Juno, but we also have a sub oscillator that we can turn on. So if I have that on, we can hear, so the sub oscillator can be just a regular square. So mighty. It can be a narrow width, you know, for Game Boy type sounds. Narrow width with 2 bumps. Narrow widths with 3. This is where you get these like crazy thin sounds that the Alpha Juno can do. Mind Idiot, welcome to the stream. How's it going? 2 octaves down, so where we're bottoming out, and then 3 down. So that's got to be pretty high up in here to get anywhere. So immediately we've got a lot that's possible. We also have noise on both synths, so I'm going to just crank that on both. So here's the noise of the DW-8000. Wow, that's annoying and loud. So we'll just, I think I have the chorus on. It sounds like, could that be? Let's see, where could that be? Level, let's turn that off. Yeah, oh, that might have been why the waveforms were a little thin sounding, so I apologize for that. The, for whatever reason, the default patch had that effect on. Let me turn the sub off. Both of the white noise generators on these synths, this one would be digital, this one I believe is analog, but I mean, again, there's really not too much of a difference here. I don't think it's the type of thing you would ever buy one synth over the other. By the way, I need to intoxicate, so cheers to all of the people who are here for this live stream. Really appreciate you guys. So 80s it defaults to chorus, Zap says. That's hilarious. Cheers. I appreciate it. Appreciate you, Zap. So anyways, let's go ahead, and now that we've heard some of that, let's just jump back to, let's say, a saw waveform, right? We'll use the sawtooth pitch modulation, or I'm sorry, width modulation on the Alpha Juno. So, whoa, that's terrible, that noise. I kind of like it where it has that little, right before it starts getting really thin. If I push it too far, right up there, you sort of lose it. So just dial back from there. And then over here on this synth, we'll set both of these to the waveforms for both oscillators to sawtooths. And then what we can do is mix them both in. We have to detune them. Make sure these are both the same octave. Let me just bring the volume of this synth down a bit, make sure I don't hit the wrong. Yes. Walter says, Alex, is there anything you would consider a modern alternative to the Alpha Juno? Well, the Behringer DeepMind 12 is sort of based off of the Juno series, so you could get similar sounds. But why in the world would you buy an $800 DeepMind 12 when you can buy a $520 Alpha Juno and be assured of that authentic 80s? I mean, I think it's so awesome to be able to play with a real synth from the 80s. I'm still like charmed by that notion. And for me, there's always going to be that debate between like a plug-in versus hardware synths or whatever. But when you buy a hardware analog synth from the 80s, you know it is that authentic sound. So for me, Walter, no, I wouldn't really say there's anything that does this synth exactly. There's a few things that really set it apart from other synths. For one would be saw width modulation. Another would be the 6-stage envelope that it has. So with that, that's a thing. Mind Idiot, I have not connected to, although that would be amazing to have like really stereo. You could get like another Alpha Juno or maybe the rack mount, and you can control two with one programmer and save patches that will load into both synths, and you could have a ultra wide Alpha Juno sort of binaural synth type thing. That would be pretty cool. But anyway, so here we have two sawtooth waves spread apart. Over here we have one sawtooth wave. Welcome to the stream, Crystal Love. How's it going? It's interesting. This is a better comparison of the oscillator sounds. Now, we're listening to one oscillator on the Alpha Juno. We could kick on, say, the square wave as well, you know. Now it's getting really thick. We could set a square wave on oscillator 2 here, just so that we kind of have something similar. And probably turn these up just a little bit. Versus. So right away, there's some interesting stuff. The DW-8000 has more of a mid-rangey type sound. Alpha Juno, much more forward. Like that sound is right in the mix. Jason, welcome to the stream. How's it going? It's one of those things where with a synth like this, even though people will be like, oh, the Alpha Juno sounds cold, it's like so present. I love this synth. I think the Alpha Juno is probably the most underrated synthesizer from the 80s. And I love the way the filter fucking sounds. I love everything about it. And you can just hear how this synth has more low end and more high end. Of course, you can get wider, thicker sounds with the DW-8000. So as we increase the detune here, we can get really fat. And this is where, you know, when I play the same chord, really present, really in your face, sounds gorgeous, but you can hear how you can get so lush. Who said that in the chat? Zozilla said the Korg is lush. Yeah. DW-8000 gets real lush real quick. So we can sort of fake, though, a pretty good amount of chorusing type sounds with the pulse width modulation. But without a doubt, I've got a little sticky F key here. Without a doubt, though, there can both be really awesome. But, you know, I think for me, it kind of depends on the situation. Already the synths are starting to stand out, where the Alpha Juno first off, they sound, again, remarkably close, considering one's a hybrid and one's all analog. But the Alpha Juno is probably going to be better for leads or anything you want to have really present, because it doesn't have that digital limitation of, you know, these digital synths just couldn't replicate that high end the way that an analog synth can in the 80s. These synths both were manufactured from 85 to 87, which is relevant because you can tell a lot about their design philosophy from that era. Both of them wanted to have oscillator shapes that would allow you to do electric piano sounds like the DX7. And so that's part of the philosophy here, and you can hear it. But I think if you want like a big lush sound, it's probably like a big lush pad. You might want to go DW-8000, because just with what we have here, now of course they both have choruses, we'll get into some of that later, but just with what we have here, you can just hear how immediately you can get some serious sound here. So yeah, there's just a crazy comparison here. Mind Idiot says there's one for 1,000 I like, but if I get it for 800 Canadian, I might shoot for it. Yeah, like I said, link in the description to one of these for $550 US dollars. I don't know exactly the comparison, but the DW-8000 in particular came with the owner's manual and the cord and everything, so really good. So Zilla says, I swear if I close my eyes, I wouldn't say they're digital. Yeah, it doesn't sound like it at all. Someone earlier was saying it might have been, I'm sorry, I missed who it was, but they were talking about how the oscillators in the DW-8000 are free running. And that is an interesting thing I noticed, even comparing when I was setting up for the stream, that you can hear that there is a sort of free running, more analog sound to the phase of the oscillators in the DW-8000 than you would expect. So anyways, we have two kind of nice sounds set up. I'm going to just add a little bit of attack and release to both of these. So we've got a filter envelope and an amp envelope on the DW-8000. Over here on the VCA, we actually need to select the VCA envelope and make sure that we have that all the way up. And then I believe time 4 is your release stage. Yeah, release time. So let's just hear real quick how close the envelopes are. And I can turn the volume just down a bit since that's getting crazy. That sounds kind of volume matched. So what we have is just something nice to be able to hear the filter with. So why don't we create a little filter modulation going on? We'll increase level 1 all the way up, and we'll just add a little attack and decay with, so that's time 1, time 2 on this synth. Bring level 2 all the way down and level 3 all the way down. And so we should have something that sort of does a nice fade in, fade out. Let's try to do the exact same thing on the, we'll just do it on the envelope over here and bring these down all the way. And make sure we've got the envelope amount. So this is a nice thing that we can kind of compare these a little bit different, because we can actually set the... That sounds like a nice filter sweep. And then over here, we can now set the... we can do a couple of different things. We could set the Alpha Juno to a gate for the VCA and then just apply that same shape but only to the filter, but bring the filter down and bring the envelope amount up. So you can hear we just need to increase that time so it matches a little closer. A little touchier. Okay, so we've basically got similar amp and filter settings here, so we can do a nice comparison. Now what I want to do is increase the resonance. So let's start, we've been listening to, let's do a filter sweep with no resonance on both, just so we can hear how that sounds, low C. Lush, plenty of low end. That's going to be a theme for the DW-8000. Alpha Juno. Bright, plenty of low end. Let's hear it again. The presence on the Alpha Juno, the way that it's just in your face, is so crazy to me that people don't like this synthesizer or think it's not a good synth from the 80s. So fat. Back to the DW-8000. You'll notice that the filter doesn't open up quite as bright. It's just never going to be as bright as the Alpha Juno. But the lushness, the thickness, the depth, the mystery, the drama. DW-8000 all day long. Let's just go play a couple of big chords. Yeah, definitely there. I'm going to bring the volume back a bit. Just so I don't torture everybody's ears, although that means you have to hear more of my voice, so. Something like that. Let's try it with 25% resonance on both synths. Very nice to have these readouts on the panel here. So now we can start to hear the divergence of how these two filters are going to sound. I think the results are going to be interesting. Let's do a low D octave. Low D on the Alpha Juno. DW-8000. Alpha Juno. DW-8000 E flat. What do we think, guys? DW-8000? By DW-8000, I mean Alpha Juno. Zozilla, I'm trying to match the resonance, although it's hard to do, and of course one of these two filters is going to shriek more than the other. But it's an interesting result. Paying attention to the bass for a second. Okay, so here are my thoughts so far. Both of them still have a good amount of bass. I'm listening through headphones. If you're listening on, with a good subwoofer, you might be able to hear a more noticeable difference. To me, they're both in the same ballpark as far as sounding good, but that Roland filter has this awesome vocally quality to it. I'm reminded of the stream we did last week with the SX240 and the Roland JX3P, where it's just the resonance on the Roland filter just sounds really beautiful. Ambient Knot says that's where you can hear the analog in the Juno. Zozilla says Juno loses bass from the resonance. Yes, so I'm guessing as we crank the resonance, we'll see some more of that. Parb says DW sounds really aggressive in a good way. By the way, welcome to the stream, Parbs. How's it going? I'm sure they're not scaled in the same way, Regal. Nick, Dubstation Zero says both sounds so good. The answer is both. Is it the slope? Jeremy, how's it going, my friend? Have a drink for me, brother. I'm stuck at work. Can we get a shout out for Jeremy real quick? Jeremy's YouTube channel is awesome, and I love his music. It's got this great 80s jazz vibe. So if you guys haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe to him. But anyways, Cheers to you, my friend. And yes. Oh, wait. Is that Jeremy Parson or Jeremy Parker? I might be thinking of the wrong person. If you're not the YouTuber Jeremy Parson, doesn't matter. Thank you. Can I get some scum cheers in the chat? How dare you have almost the same name as somebody else if it's not you. If it is, that's awesome. And you should listen to, I think the channel's Jeremy Parker. I can't tell. If you have a YouTube channel too, though, that's awesome. But anyways, I feel embarrassed about myself now. Let's go ahead and check out the resonance at 50% on both. So now we might have to juggle the volume a bit. Jeremy says, thank you for the shout out, brother. Not me. I suck. I am sure you do not suck, my friend. So shout outs to you, but not the YouTuber I was thinking of. Low C, 50% resonance, DW-8000. This is interesting. Let's try it out with the alpha. Back to the DW. Listen to the way that pulls apart those low harmonics really well. Listen on the way down to the sing-song harmonics right there in the low mids. Right around in there. Very beautiful. A lot of bass on the DW-8000. So what's interesting is now they're starting to kind of pull into different lanes. With 25% resonance, I was kind of team Alpha Juno. Now with 50% resonance, kind of team DW-8000, which is interesting. Let's go ahead and go up to 75% here on both and see what we get. This is where it's going to get interesting. DW-8000 first. So, of course, as people are pointing out in the chat, the way that the resonance is scaled is different on both synths. So this is sort of an unfair thing in the sense that one synth might start to self-resonate quicker than the other, but it's the only way we can really compare the two. Now we're really starting to get that sing-song harmonic quality, but with the DW-8000, which is extra great considering we can have that detune, so we can kind of get some more imperfections in the sound. I know the DW-8000 does not have an SSM filter, but to me, it's definitely very similar to the sound of the Poly 6, where you've just got that like really sharp, clear, clinical almost precision to the resonance down here on the Alpha Juno. Very beautiful. A little constrained, actually. I'm surprised. But those harmonics are there for sure. Let's go ahead and crank the resonance all the way on both. I apologize to everybody's ears. We'll do a low D on the DW-8000. Jesus skull fucking Christ. Oh, that low end. Can you guys hear that? That is like going to break my headphones. Holy shit. Let's do that again, but just a little quieter. Wow. Wow, that's insane. So you can hear that this filter on the DW-8000 is fully resonant. We could turn the oscillators off and let's just turn the volume down a bit. And we're hearing, absolutely hearing that filter self-oscillate. Wow. And the low end is just insane. Gingy asks, does the real-time controller actually do the job? Can you adjust multiple parameters in real time? You can adjust multiple things, but neither of these synths react. Well, actually, I don't know so much with the Alpha Juno. I don't think I've tried it. With the DW-8000 and, say, the JX3P, which we had on the stream last week, they're just not good at receiving note information at the same time that you're editing. So for me, it's probably not the way to go if you want to do some sort of like real-time tweaking with notes coming in. These synths, the MIDI implementation's just not up to, spec with that, in my opinion. So anyways, let's go over here and check out the resonance on the Alpha Juno maxed out. James actually points out something right. Mighty Pinto, welcome to the stream. You can actually set up, I should have mentioned this. On both of these controllers, we have this controller A, controller B. Those are macros that allow you to adjust multiple parameters at the same time. So that is actually very much a way that you could do multiple parameters and have it just be assigned to one fader, which is pretty awesome. I just mean if you want to use these synths kind of in like a modern desktop hardware synth sort of way where you have a sequencer sending it notes and you want to use real-time control, just be aware that these synths can be a little bit finicky because they are from 1985. And with the JX3P in particular, I've noticed that it can be like a problem. Let's see. Spiritual Anarchist says the tone modify on the Alpha Juno adjusts a couple of parameters at the same time with the Alpha Dial. That is correct, and a very cool thing that this synth can do that does set it apart a little bit from other synths of the time. Let's see. Zozilla says, I love cranking the resonance on the Korg without the low-pass filter use. Can you do it? Saw detuned a bit. Resonance cranks. No low-pass filter to get that 90s poly crisp sounds. What do you mean by no low-pass filter? You mean just turning the cutoff higher? So turning the envelope amount off and then bringing the cutoff up? So I think what you're saying is to get a brighter synth sound, can you just dial up the resonance? And yes, you can. So that's a thing. But so what's interesting about the Alpha Juno is we cannot get fully self-resonant sounds out of it. And this is probably the number one thing people will cite about the synth, other than it doesn't have the knobs built into it, that they don't like about it, is you can't get fully self-resonant sounds. In this way, I would say it's kind of comparable to... I would say that approximately 75% resonance on the DW-8000 seems to be similar to 100% on the Roland. I mean, I would say that's pretty much almost identical in terms of sound, considering, again, these are very different synthesizers. So I think the question I would ask yourself is, how often do you actually dial the resonance all the way up to 100%? There are certain sounds, dub sirens and shit like that, that maybe you want that fully resonant sound. But for basses, leads, pads, basically all the shit that you use a synthesizer for day in and day out, I never have the resonance cranked to above 75% or something like that. So for me, it is not a negative that the Alpha Juno is not fully resonant. The filter from it is not fully resonant. I could understand if you were to buy only one synthesizer ever, you might want a synth that has a fully resonant filter. But for me, living in a world where we all have a bunch of fucking synths and plugins and stuff, I don't know about that. Let's see. Dubstation says, my favorite DW-8000 trick, set pitch bend range to 0. So let me go ahead and just look at that real quick. Where is that pitch bend range? It's in here. I know it is. Oscillator joystick set to 0, and then set the joystick to voltage to the cutoff. Let's see what we have. How do I send the joystick to the filter? Let's see if I increase. I know there's a way to do it on this synth, but I don't see it on the actual hardware controller here, but I know I could look at the parameter and adjust it. So remind me to get back to that. I think it's okay if I don't do that right at this moment. But that's a thing you can do, is actually control it. Everything that Dubstation's saying, where you can pitch bend MIDI info to control the voltage controlled filter with 16K resolution, and you can even sequence the bends in your DAW. So if you want to do some really smooth filter control with a DAW or a sequencer, you could do it that way. So parameter 67, he knows what's up. Okay, so I'm just going to go to parameter 67 and then set that value to on, and that should let me do it. Yeah, so let's bring that all the way down, bring the envelope amount down. Thank you very much, Dub. Just to show that something you can do with this synthesizer that's super cool is actually do really smooth filter control. You don't need to buy a programmer like this or something, and you could do it. So I appreciate that, Dubstation. As always, your knowledge is very appreciated. Let's see. But another thing is, I really need to stop saying do on live streams. It's a very silly thing. We do lose more bass on the Alpha Juno as well. Which is an interesting thing, where we're going to have that. So one thing is when we're comparing these synths kind of raw dog and by themselves, it can be a little deceiving. You might actually listen to them and go, okay, I like the fatness of the DW-8000. What I can say from using this in mixes is often the DW-8000 is just so thick in the low end that it sounds good, but like you can't mix it. So there's something to be said for the Alpha Juno's presence. Like I said, this synth is about presence, it's the Alpha Juno, and then this synth is about depth and lushness. So let's go ahead and get ourselves a nice little pad sound going here. So I'm going to increase the release on both synths and add some attack to the DW-8000. So let's see what we have here. Oh, and dial way back the resonance. Wow. Let's add a little bit of resonance. That sounds very nice. 50%. Very good. We'll add more release because that's not enough release for me. Zilla says, let's add some pitch LFO. So why don't we go ahead and do that too? Obviously, both of these synthesizers have LFOs on them. So all I have to do is over here on oscillator 1 and 2, I think, or on the movement generator. Where's it go? Modulation generator. We have a ramp generator on the DW-8000, which I don't believe we have any sort of equivalent thing on the Alpha Juno. Just something to know. But anyways, going over here to the oscillator amount from the modulation generator. That's Korg's slang for LFO. One thing I love about this synth, the DW-8000, is the LFO does have a fade in, so Zilla, so we could actually fade it in. That's this delay slider right here. But the way that the LFO is scaled to the oscillators is very nice. It's very smooth, and even with a big, 50% would usually be like way too much on a synth like this, but it's just a little seasick. It's not that bad, but I could slow that down and bring that back a little and see. Yo, we got the Romex King up in the chat. How's it going, Chad? Maybe just a little bit less, but it's in there. And so let's go ahead and try to match that sound now. So we're going to set the VCA over to the envelope here. We got the envelope amount all the way up already. And so what is happening here is on the Alpha Juno, we only have one envelope. So we have to either share it or not use it on the amplifier, the volume of the synth. So if you want to have a nice pad, you need to have a slow attack, medium decay, fade out a bit, and a lot of release to get that sort of a sound. So we actually have to assign the VCA to that. If we don't want to use that, we can use just the gate, meaning that while you have a key down, the amp's all the way on, and then when you take your finger off the key, amp's all the way off. Very useful for like SH101 style bass lines, but for pads, we need to use that envelope. And the thing is, we've only got one. Now, in the case of something like a pad, that's not a problem because you kind of want that sound to be consistent. But without a doubt, the DW-8000 allows you to have more options. Autumn, have a wonderful night. Take care, my workout buddy. So let's go ahead and see how close we got here with just... I love the fucking resonance on this synth. Wow. Dial that up a little bit. See, for me, the thing about the DW-8000 is that resonance gets a little sharp, whereas over here, it's just gorgeous. Also, you need a pretty good amount of release on this synth. I'm surprised. They're similar. Let's go ahead and add some LFO to these to the oscillator here. So let me just see. We just need to add some LFO amount here. So this is a good example where you need a very small amount on this synthesizer to get a pleasing sound, you know. They both sound good, but we can hear I mean, I really love with the DW-8000 how much like fine control we have over that LFO. We have a pretty good amount, maybe like 30% on the DW-8000, and we have 5% on the Alpha Juno. So you can see how you have to be much more fiddly with that, but that's not really a thing that really matters. Jordan Jones, welcome to the stream. Jordan says he was just trying out the Inktomi plugin of mine on a Polymoog VST. Sounds tight. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Like I said earlier in the stream, that plugin is still for free. Link is in the description. Vintage Effects if you want some chorus, ensemble, phaser, and reverb. They're both really good. Parb says the Juno's so smooth. Ridley Kemp, welcome to the stream. I feel like I'm on the big generator tour. Yeah, so we're getting kind of close. Maybe just a little bit less. I need a little more release, though. And then over here. So one thing that I think with the Alpha Juno is going to be the chorus. So you can almost tell that just like the Juno 660 and 106, Roland realized the DCO with a sub sort of thing is not going to have that same thickness that you get. So although both of these synths have choruses, the Alpha Juno has a stereo chorus. I'm running these synths both in mono today just for this stream. Let's go ahead and turn that chorus on and see what happens to our sound. And by the way, unlike on a Juno 106, the chorus is actually fully controllable, so the rate of that. Really not too much of a difference. Let's try dialing it way the hell up. That's a difference. So it's a really great, really thick analog chorus. Wow, it is crazy how far that goes. So they definitely knew that they needed to add something to add the thickness that's missing. So again, if I just play this without the chorus. Wow. That sounds small for sure, versus DW-8000 has a digital chorus / delay. So what's going on here is it's a time-based effect. With a short value, it's going to sound more like a chorus. With a long value, it's going to sound more like a delay. So let's go ahead and increase that. And I think it's already on something of a chorus-like value. So let's see what we get. Interesting. So we can set different delay times to get different kinds of sounds. And different feedback amounts can actually kind of push us into like flanger territory. Like here's it at extreme. Which is way too much, right? I mean, I don't think anybody wants that, but I just wanted to show you what was possible there. We'll do the classic back and forth action, you know, front to back. What's interesting is like it's actually difficult to get it to chorus quite as hard. Lost the synth. Love it when the synth goes. I think it's the cable on this guy. Where's that fucking cable? Oh, it's coming. It's coming. There we go. Sorry about that. And if we dial that chorus back, we'll see more like a standard chorus type sound. Anil, the Synth Maniac, welcome to the stream. Jordan says the swells with the DW-8000 hurt so good. Yeah. Zazilla says the DW can carry a song on its own, in my opinion. Yeah, they both. Parb says the DW sounds so unique and fat, harmonics all over the place. Yes, it's pretty crazy. So I think I've got these kind of close. We could actually increase the detune by 1 on the DW-8000 because this thing's so thick sounding. If we go back up to a higher chorus rate, let's try it again. Whoa, that went insane. We've got a little range on this controller that gets a little bit noisy. So yeah, they both sound incredible, don't they? You're starting to hear where both of them might have a advantage, disadvantage sort of situation. But for me, they're both pretty incredible. Zazilla asks, are those in Omnisphere sound sources? I'm not aware that the DW-8000 is in Omnisphere. I bet the Alpha Juno is, but I'm not 100% sure. But Omnisphere has all of the greats like the CS80, Jupiter 8, Prophet VS, so many synthesizers. I'd have to go look. I mean, like the list of synths that are in Omnisphere sound sources is pretty crazy. So yeah, that's kind of a comparison that I think is fair when it comes to the synthesizers. Both of these synths are velocity sensitive. If you don't really care about that, you can get a DW-6000, which came out in the same year, 85, usually for cheaper than a DW-8000. And the same thing's true with the Alpha Juno. If you don't mind 49 keys and no velocity or aftertouch, you can often get an Alpha Juno 1 for cheaper than Alpha Juno 2. For me, in my opinion, just my opinion, I would say that these synths are so reasonable anyways. Why wouldn't you spring for one? As Dubstation was saying earlier, the DW-8000 has twice the waveforms as the 6000. And for some of those reasons, there's that. What I will say is the 6000 has an analog chorus. So you could probably hear in the comparison of the choruses here that the analog chorus in the Alpha Juno is probably slightly superior. It's just so lush and thick and has that classic Juno Roland sound. In the 80s, I don't think anybody was really beating Roland at the chorus game. And the DW-8000's chorus is good. It's serviceable. I mean, I think it sounds really good, honestly. But what it isn't is, you know, quite analog. Something you can do with it, though, is use it as a delay. So why don't we just turn the attack down here and the decay a bit, and we can get more of like a pluck sound. So you can hear an interesting little thing here, which is that by turning the time down on the chorus, we've now got a delay. So it's worth pointing out that there is a reason you might want to actually use this digital delay as opposed to just an analog chorus, in the sense that the DW-8000 can do sounds that have that delay built into them that's not possible with the Alpha Juno. Again, these are all things that you have to ask yourself the question of what you want to do. Alan says Retroaktiv is the brand that makes the top of the line controllers. I agree. I am a huge fan of Retroaktiv and what Rob is doing. There's absolutely an argument that you can get away with making your own sounds with controller plugins. I've done that before on this stream. Love controller. You could also get a Novation. You'd have to tell me the exact model, Dubstation 0, but you could get one MIDI controller that you could route to a bunch of them. But one of the advantages is the ability to use patch generation, which I've shown in other streams. I plan on showing it at the end of this stream if we have time, but it's just a thing. So yeah, very much so. Let me catch up with the chat reel here. Borislav, welcome to the stream. I have the Matrix 6 just off camera here. Amazing synthesizer. Let's see. Zozilla says, are those controllers workable with VSTs? They actually are. So you can use this to control, say, for instance, the free DW-8000 plugin or the Alpha Juno plugin. You just MIDI learn everything and it'll work just fine. Dubstation says the Novation SL Mark II. Yeah, so that's pretty crazy. Dubstation 0, aka Nick, has one MIDI controller that he routes to, I want to say 5 different synths. And that would be, that's a way that, and it's cheap too. I think it's like $200 or something you were saying. So that's a very cool thing that you can do. Gingy says a Casio CZ video would be a treat. Well, I might have something for you in the future. That's all I'll say about that for now. Let's go ahead and go in a completely different direction. Let's go to Patch Gen, Scratch Generator. I'm going to go ahead and hit that. Bring the volume down, bring the glide down, bring oscillator 2 down, and we should have something like a sawtooth. And I'm going to do the exact same thing over here. Let's go to Patch Generator and hit enter, and we should have the same. It's funny how much more volume I end up needing. Let's go ahead and check out the capacity to do the sort of SH101 test, which is kind of my new category of checking out sounds. I used to only do pads, but I like checking out, especially after I saw Dubstation Zero's live set with the SH-101 filter on his bass lanes. I was like, I need to definitely do more of that type of shit. So what we're going to do is turn the sub oscillator on the Alpha Juno, and we're going to just leave it on just like a kind of a just a basic square wave. So what that is just 1 octave down. And we're going to do the same thing on the DW-8000. Now, what's interesting here is the DW-8000 doesn't have a sub-oscillator, but it's got a second oscillator that we can drop an octave. So, and all we have to do is to try to match it. You don't have to. You could absolutely just use the sawtooth, but we'll make it a square wave just to make it kind of close. We're going to bring the detune all the way down. Trying to get the tuning really tight. That way we're not hearing differences in tuning, but we're hearing differences in sound. Wow. That's so thick. The DW-8000 in the low end is going to be much more mid-rangey. Oh. Oh, that is like unfair. That is so fucking... The low end coming out of the Alpha Juno is just kind of crazy. Oh, so nasty. I'd be curious to see. I don't remember if the Alpha Juno has a unison mode. I know the DW-8000 does. Let me see. Do I have a parameter on here? I think you just have to press the unison mode on the synth. Let's go ahead and do that. And maybe turn the volume down. So now we're outside of SH-101 territory, but the thickness is real. Okay, so is that really fair to compare a synth that can do unison when another one can't? Let's see a bit here. Let me catch up here. Let's see. Sonic Byte says the Alpha Juno is better for bass. MKS50 has unison, the Alphas don't. Okay, thank you for the info, Gerald. Also another person who's just got a wealth of information, so I appreciate you. So yeah, so again, a difference. Now, you don't always want, I mean, the bass is just so pure and awesome on the Juno that maybe you don't care, but I mean, the DW-8000... to me, is going to be like more cyberpunk sort of a thing. I mean, the fact that you can have 6... or 8 oscillators. I guess it would be 16 oscillators. It's an 8-voice synth, I believe, stacked on top of each other. Whereas over here, we're getting just an awesome single oscillator and sub. Let's go ahead and add some manipulation to the filter here. We're going to add some resonance too. So we're really trying to pull out that fundamental frequency. What's interesting is the resonance on the Alpha Juno in the low end is actually very powerful. So you lose resonance on the sound, but when you have the resonance tuned to the low end, it actually sticks out a little bit more on the Juno. Hard to match those for sure. Let's see. Oh, it's so thick on the Juno. Okay, let's go ahead and apply some envelope. So we're just going to add some decay time. Let's see here. Level 2 all the way down. Time level 1 all the way up. There we go. And level 3 and everything all the way down. So we should have something like... Irish Musico, welcome to the stream. How's it going? We were just checking out that digital delay. So that's how this synth sounds. With a little... We'll leave a decent amount there just so we can compare. And then same idea over here. So now we're getting kind of like a little plucky. What I will say about the Alpha Juno is the way that resonance doesn't get as shrill in the high end, I appreciate. Okay, let's take it out of unison mode just to make it a little bit more fair of a comparison. I'm going to bring the envelope down a bit on the... just to try to match them closer. So this is an interesting thing where, you know, the character of the filter of the DW-8000 has a little bit more of that, like, thing to it. Dub Station with the Vulture Culture vocal sample pack. Hell yeah. Woof. I need an oh so thick sample. Yikes. I don't know. For me, on this type of example, I just think the... just sounds so good. So what's interesting is before, when we were doing some pad sound design, it was pretty clear that the DW-8000, when the resonance isn't tuned to the fundamental notes, was letting more bass through. So basically, as you crank the resonance, you don't lose the rest of the signal. We have a kind of an opposite situation on the Alpha Juno, where as you crank the resonance, that frequency is really emphasized, and you lose the rest of the signal, even though it doesn't go fully self-resonant. But when you tune that resonance to the fundamental frequencies, it's kind of unbeatable. To me, the DW-8000's just not doing it for me almost at all. unless you turn unison on, which when we go do that, that's something we can do that's not possible down here. Then you start getting that kind of thicker sort of a thing. So yeah, let's see. It's difficult to say on this one, but I would say for me, with the SH-101 baseline sort of sound, I'm probably going Alpha Juno. But when it comes to the lush pads, there's really kind of not a comparison. So let's go ahead and do maybe one more little example here. Let's go ahead and create another scratch patch. We're going to bring the oscillators down. Make sure we're in poly mode. Turn that off and glide all the way down. And then same idea over here. We'll just go to patch gen, enter main. You can really hear how similar these are. It's actually incredible. Very, very similar. Let's see. We're going to go ahead. Oh, Zap says the Hoover sound. Yeah, so of course we should take a second and talk about that. So what you can do with an Alpha Juno that you basically can't do on any synthesizer, I think most people know this, but it's create a Hoover type sound. So what we're going to do is just set the waveform for both the sawtooth and the square wave to pulse width modulation, increase the amounts of that, and you start to get that sound immediately. So there's that, right? Another thing we could do is turn the chorus on. Get even more of that sound. What we could do is apply, where is it? To the DCO, we can apply some glide, of course. I know there's a way to put this into mono mode. Portamento. There we go. But what we also need to really sell the sound is to apply some envelope modulation. So we're going to just add a little of that, make sure that's there, and then bring all the rest of this down. We could take it like very far and of course add a sub oscillator into. The lack of almost any other synthesizer from this era being able to do sawtooth width modulation means you really can't do this sound on a DW-8000 or anything else, and that does make this synth very special. The original Hoover sound is a preset called What The in this synth that was designed by Eric Persing, which is really interesting, so worth knowing as well. And that's the creator of Omnisphere, for those of you who might not know. I imagine most of you do. But somebody watching this video doesn't. So, but anyways, let's go ahead and kind of finish this off with what I would call like a Moog style lead sound. So I'm going to go to patch gen and press enter here. Again, sorry for the noise coming from this motherfucking AC unit. And, oh, let's turn Portamento off. So what I want to do to get that sort of Moog lead sound is first off bring oscillator 2 in. Make sure that they are the same octave here. I just want to point out something you can do with two oscillators too that you can't do on the Alpha Juno, of course, is you can detune them, and we actually have an interval switch here, which allows you to set the interval between the octaves so we can kind of get these really great really quick, you can get Roland D50 soundtrack-esque patches. That's very quick for a yeah. Dubstation points out that the AX60 actually has sawtooth width modulation right off camera here, and that's correct. Other synths in this room that can do it might be off the top of my head. I know the D50 can do something like it digitally, but I think that's it. Wouldn't be surprised if the SQ80 has it up its sleeve, but that's a thing there. Boris says, I know this vid is about the DW and Juno, but I've been struggling with getting the why can't this be love oscillator sync sound out of the Matrix 6. Wanted to know if you were able to make it. Why can't this be love sync sound? So I don't know if I know the song off the top of my head, unfortunately. Who's the artist there? Anyways, we don't need to do that for this sound as far as creating a fifth, but I just want to point it out. That's something you can do with the DW-8000. We're going to add some detune. We're going to bring the cutoff down. What am I doing wrong here? Anyway, so this is sort of in your... I appreciate the do, Alan. I'll look up the Van Halen song after the stream and see if I can get my head around it. It's a sync sound. I believe the Matrix 6 can do sync. I'd be surprised if it couldn't. So the answer is probably going to be routing the pitch envelope or even one of the ramp envelopes from the Matrix 6 to the sync of the oscillator 2 or something like that. But sometimes you have to, some synth that's weird, it'll be like oscillator 1 is the one that has to be synced. I think when I was doing my OBXD video, I found that oscillator 1 had to be synced, so it was like kind of the opposite. So it might be that because they're both Oberheim. Anyways, let's try to create something similar. We're going to have to use sawtooth with modulation. So let's just go ahead and get something like that set up here. I'm going to cheat and use a little sub oscillator, which I'm not using on the DW-8000, but we need to do something to give it a little bit of movement. Have a great night, Zozilla. Hard to nail the two. Wow, that's a chord. So this is interesting. In my opinion, I'm having trouble dialing in the sound for like a lead. It sounds really good on the DW. On the Alpha, I don't know. To me, that's just not like putting money in the bank. You know what I mean? Versus, it just sounds great. Whatever, it's not quite there. But what I will say, that once you start playing chords with this type of sound, so if I play like a good old, I think I've got some LFO modulation going on in here, so let's just turn that off. And then over here, yo, like even though you don't have the dimension and depth and lushness on a single note of the Alpha Juno, once you introduce playing a chord, it's got so much power. It's kind of not there on the DW-8000. You know, like it's, again, we kind of keep going back to this, but the Alpha Juno is just so present sounding. It's so in your face. And although I think earlier in the stream when we showed like a big dark pad, the DW is just going to crush it all day because of that second oscillator. When we're doing this type of more present brassy type of pad, I just think a little more release. A little less pulse width modulation. Whereas over here on the DW-8000, let's drop the interval on the second one. Try it again. Turn the volume down just a little bit because it's really It's kind of crazy. It's actually hard to like quite pin that one down. Aquatic says, Alpha Juno is great for chords. I have to admit that. Jason says, I really liked one of your first streams at the Poly 6 where you made a whole song and sang with it. Yeah, that was January, like 2 years ago or something like that. And it's been quite a journey here on YouTube checking out synths. So really appreciate you being along for the journey since then, Jason. You know, it's been a lot of fun. They're both sounding good, but now all of a sudden, for this more brassy type of sound, I just think the Alpha Juno sounds so... hard to volume match these. Does sound very beautiful. Hard to compare them. Cygnus says, when I use my Alpha Juno as a lead, I usually find myself pumping it through some sort of distortion saturation, but don't touch it when I'm using chords or pads. The DW-8000 really surprised me though. Yeah, both of the synths are just pretty much insane. Like, as far as I'm concerned, I think they're both incredible. So I'm gonna go back over to the computer here so I can answer any questions you guys have. But essentially, I think that's a pretty good conversation starter as far as it goes. Absurd TV, welcome to the stream. I didn't know the DW could come that close to the Juno, for sure. They really can. Both sound pretty similar, actually. I was shocked when we were like messing around with some of the oscillators, how much of a difference there was there. Or how little of a difference, I should say. So I want to know, for everybody still here, which of the two synths do you think is the ultimate pick, the sub $600 vintage synthesizer on the market right now? Because to me, it's kind of the point of the whole stream. Pyrex Carrier, welcome to the stream. I love the JX3P as well. Did that synth on the stream last week. Really great sounding synth. I know a lot of people watch this channel and they are people breaking into the world of vintage synthesizers, whether they're beginners or maybe they have some modern hardware synths and they're curious, they're like vintage curious. I think these two synths are the all-time just winners as far as value goes for vintage synthesizers. You cannot buy a new synth that has 61 keys, velocity and aftertouch, analog filter, does everything these synths do. Of course, you could get a Behringer DeepMind 12 for $800 that has effects built in, but you don't need effects because you've got Inktomi, the free Vulture Culture plugin. Link is in the description for a limited time. Crystal Love, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I think you're awesome. Thank you for your support. But yeah, I want to know what you guys think. Which of the two synths is the better one for a beginner? And when I say beginner, I don't even mean beginner. If you had to sell all of your synths and only keep one, Really, that's probably the better option. If you had to sell all of your vintage synths, all of your hardware, and you only got to keep one, which would it be? I think a lot of people want to know the answer. And I'm going to leave it up to you guys. I think I did a half-decent show of a job trying to compare the two, show the strengths and weaknesses of both. Aquatic says the DW-8000 is more flexible. Gerald says a bigger variety with the 8000. The Juno has the warmer sound. Regal says biggest concern would be the custom Korg chips. Yes, I mean, as far as they go, DW-8000s, they sold a lot of them. So there's going to be a lot of chips out there. Zap says keeping the Juno. Ambient Not says DW-8000 because you can get lost in it. I can do a poll, right? What do I do? Start a poll. Let's go ahead here. Why don't we ask the chat via a poll what the answer is? I'd be curious. Normally, I don't really like need to know the exact ratio, but I'd be interested. Jason says Jupiter 6. Okay, that's unfair. 40 Thieves, welcome to the stream, my friend. How's it going? I want to get an EPROM programmer to do that DW-8000 analog wave expansion from Vintage King. Regal says the Poly 6. I'm a big fan of that synth as well, but it costs at least 3 times, maybe 4 times the amount of these synths. So for people who want to just get one vintage synthesizer that's awesome, and I think both of these synths are awesome. Like, these should not be thought of just because you can get them for $550. They should not be thought of as less than synths. Like, these are incredible vintage analog machines. Crystal Love says, ain't gonna lie, that DW-8000 is it. Pyrex Carrier goes for the DW-8000. Nick with the DW-8000, 2 envelopes and 2 oscillators. Cygnus. I can't even vote because I'm too biased for the Juno. Honestly, 50-50 for me in sound. Gerald says DW-8000 because of Unison. Gerald, I'm curious, if we were to talk about the rack mount alpha that can do Unison, would that change your mind? Regal DW-8000's more versatile. Let's see how the chat's looking like, the poll's looking like we're getting pretty heavy love for the DW-8000. Alan says I voted for the DW-8000 because I don't have one. 40 Thieves. Juno sound is better, or is butter, but I like the features on the DW and the hybrid architecture. Parbs, DW-8000 because it's so unique and fat sounding. Gerald would not change his opinion just for that Unison. Cygnus says, forgot about the rack mount version, didn't know it could do Unison. Yeah, Gerald let us know that. I didn't know that either this stream. Aquatic Borealis, think you'll ever get your hands on a Prophet? Would be interested to see how that played out. I think the Prophet 600 with a Gleegly mod is something I'd like to get at some point. Definitely have not. I need to recover some money after the CS70M as far as synths go. Prophet 600 I think is a very compelling synth because they hover around the $1,500 mark, and they have some of my favorite features, like from the AX60, the ability to do VCO to filter FM. That's awesome. That's something I didn't realize until Dubstation 0 pointed that out to me. And that makes it very, very compelling. Past that, I'm not that... Here's my thing about sequential and Moog synths. They are expensive, and I'm talking about vintage here, not modern. Although it might apply to the modern stuff, but I think sequentials like Take 5, for instance, is a very reasonably priced modern synth that's pretty crazy what it can do. It basically can do everything for $1,500 or so. I think they might have gone up in price since they came out. But, you know, the vintage stuff from Sequential and Moog is just so expensive. ARP2, to the point where it's like, for what you're getting, you're not getting as much as you paid, right? Let's see. Parbs asks, would you consider buying an Andromeda? Absolutely. I absolutely want to own an Andromeda at some point. They are expensive. They like to break. Hard to get one. You know, it would have to be a good deal, knowing that you're going to be putting in that money into repairing it. 40 Thieves, got to do that Casio CZ1. Great bang for your buck. I really hope to do that soon on this channel. That's all I'll say about that. Spiritual Anarchist says they want a Prophet X because I want to do D50 sounds with actual analog filters, but it's so high in price. That would be really cool, actually, to do some D50 sounds, load that into the sample bank. Yeah, I think that's a very compelling thing. Prophet X is definitely getting its like moment in the sun with Espen sort of talking. A lot of people have been saying, hey, this was kind of like slept on when it came out, and now that they've come down in price in the used market, it's a really compelling buy. I thought about it for a while. I would love to borrow one, aquatic. I just need to find someone who's got one. So anybody who's in the area who has synths, I mean, Troy from Together's really cool band. Really appreciate him hooking it up with the Yamaha EX5 and the Blofeld. He's got an Andromeda, but I'm not going to ask him to borrow it. Let's see. Jordan says, you seem like you would enjoy the Polyvox, my dream oddball synth. Not only do I enjoy it, it's in the studio right over there. I've done a couple of streams on it, or at least one. That is like one of my favorite synths of all time. I'm not really into mono synths. I prefer big bad poly synths, but the Polyvox would be the exception to that. It's just such an incredible sounding synth. Pyrex got a Prophet 08. I totally think that's an awesome synth. I think that's another one of those underrated. Dubstation has the Prophet 12, also another really underrated synth. I'd love to get my hands on a Poly Evolver at some point, but you know, there's so many synths, so little money, and also I'm at synth saturation. I've just got way too many 20-something synths. That's more than enough. My rule is basically if I can't have them all plugged in and playing them all at once, I don't want them. I just want it to be, you know, I want to be able to actually use the synths and play them. I don't want to have them lying around or in storage or there but not on. To me, that's a heartbreak. I'd rather have someone who can use that synth, get some use out of it. Maestro's another one. That would be a really cool one. I'd love to check that out, 40 Thieves. Too Afraid to Break It, absolutely. My studio's gotten so stupid, 40, and you know, the biggest thing I always say is this has like been an interesting experiment for me to go back in time to these vintage synths, but it is not like I am saying I think this is the path for everybody. I think synths like the DW-8000 and Alpha Juno, 100% everybody should get one of the two of those, in my opinion, because they're just so great and reasonable, and it's a way that you'll always have a vintage flavor to your sound. So you don't have to only use that. You can use plugins, you can use a modern hardware synth. But I think everybody should get, this is just my opinion, it's great to have a vintage analog or vintage hybrid sound in your setup so that when you want to go there, you've got it. DW-8000 can do some awesome analog filter electric piano sounds that like put the DW-8000 to shame, or sorry, the DX7 to shame. Yeah, it's, you know, that's a good thing. Some of these other crazy synths, I think the plugins sound great. I think that the modern hardware is so much more usable and simple. You either pay so much for something like the JD-800 that does have the actual faders on it, right? You pay so much for that, and it's nothing analog about it. I mean, like, yeah, yeah. Jinji asks, what's the max number of synths that's optimal? I would say somewhere around 20. For me, in this studio with the setup and everything, I think if I had to just like, if you want to like have fun and jam, I would just get one of each flavor. So it's cool to have like one vintage digital too. So something like the D50 is probably the best for being in that vintage digital territory. SQ80 is borders as like vintage digital and hybrid because it does have those incredible analog filters. JD-800, Yamaha SY77, incredible value synth. I'm blanking on some of the other vintage digitals. Wave Station, incredible. Proteus, incredible. That's a good flavor to have. Vintage analog DCO synth, good to have. Not a bad idea to have maybe one vintage analog 2 VCO synth like a Prophet 600 or Chroma Polaris, something like that. But I mean, beyond that, a lot of the synths that I have in here are sort of duplicates of the types of sounds they can do. I really don't think I need a Moog Source, an MS-20, and a Roland SH2 and a Polyvox. Those four all basically sound about the same. I mean, they all have their characteristics, but they all do the same thing. Very redundant. So that's where I would say if I was doing this to, you know, not as sort of an experiment to try out all of these vintage synths, but more as just to like set up a really good studio, I'd just pick one of those instead of four. So yeah, let's see here. Parb says, plugins are amazing, Serum and Analog Lab, but you need a few character pieces to give your depth to that sound. Something vintage digital and something vintage analog. That's probably the best answer. I would probably go with a vintage digital, vintage analog, maybe a modern hardware synth, and do the rest with plugins. I think that's the answer. Brian, welcome to the stream. How about the Roland MKS-50? Is that the... I get confused with the MKS. Is that the version of the Juno that has like the quartet thing going on? Anyways, we're gonna call it there for the stream tonight. Should have a video up on the channel, I believe on Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern, checking out the some tips I have for buying synths from Japan. So like for instance, my Alpha Juno I got from Japan. You can get synths from Japan often very cheaply. Link in the description for the Alpha Junos from Japan. But just some tips you need to know before you buy them, because sometimes you can get burned. So that's going to be a video up 1 p.m. on Sunday, I think. And so if I don't see you there in the chat, I'll see you next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Love and light, bitches. I am out.